Hi, welcome to the next Tao in a Minute. Okay, we're going to go further into this topic of identity. Okay, we talked about this last time when I was on the other side of the world in Laos. And I want to talk about this more because identity is a really hard thing for people in society, as I talked about before. But we're going to talk about now in a sort of a way, how does a Taoist think about identity? Taoists believe that you're either searching for something called your Ming or your life essences, right? We're running from meeting to meeting, job to job. We're trying to get everything done in a day. By the end of the day, we're pooped and we've gone through a pot of coffee or espressos or chocolate covered espresso beans or Red Bulls or whatever because we're constantly chasing our life essences. Our original spirit and our energy and our vitality is drained because humans don't work on a clock, right? We want to wake up and we want to move slowly, but we have to get up and we have to move and we have to get out of bed and we have to be here at this time and do it this time and do it this time. But how does our body work? Do our body work that way? No. Sometimes we're like, oh, I have no energy. Well, yeah, the tide comes in and the tide goes out. If the tide only comes in, we call that flooding. If the tide only goes out, we call that receding. It's got to have a balance, but people only want energy, 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 energy. But the candle that burns twice as bright burns half as long. And so people are constantly chasing these life essences because they burn them so much. They use so much yang that they consume the yin. Think of a yang being like a candle and the yin being like the oil. The higher the flame, the less the oil. So we have to have the flame commensurate to the level of the oil. And if we need to fill the oil up, we need to reduce the flame so we can bring the oil back up. And so the other part is what we call Xing, or our nature. So identity lives off of our essences. It lives off of our vitality. These identities are constantly being filled because of anxieties and depressions and shoulds and how we should live our life versus just living our life. Whereas when we're following our nature, we know that there's sometimes we just want to be quiet. Sometimes we just want to be peaceful. Sometimes we just want to go and do things and use our body and express ourselves. And all of these are processes. And as we've discussed before in other episodes, everything in life is just about a process. And we go from being quiet and introverted to extroverted and wanting to do things and to quiet. And when people say, we were just, extroverted, why are you so quiet now? Well, the tides change. Just like the tide comes in, the tide goes out. The tide and things change. That's the nature of things. The tide goes in and out, and it becomes high tide and low tide. The moon affects the tide. There are things that affect the nature because everything's interactive. So when we talk about our nature, we're talking about the things that we would naturally do when we were living in accordance with who we are versus feeding an identity, which is an achiever, a doer, a slacker, a nobody, a depressive, right? These identities are outside of our nature because to be anything for any length of time goes against nature because nature is dynamic. My master used to say growing up in the temple, nothing exists, all things are becoming. But identities are very fixed things. And when something is so fixed that it can't evolve and change, then it becomes stuck, it becomes stagnation. When water flows, it purifies itself, but when it stagnates like a pond or a swamp, then it becomes deadly and it kills us. And so that's what identity versus our nature does. And so I want to give you guys an example, or I want to give you guys a task for the next week until the next lesson. I want you to look and keep a journal, and I want you to see what are the things, even if you can't do them, it's fine. What are the things you would naturally do during the week? What do you feel like, right? At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you're like, oh, you know what I want for dinner? I want noodles. And then 6 o'clock comes and you don't want noodles. And you're like, wow, I can't make up my mind. You can. It's just that part of the process what you need, but this part of the process you need. So having all the judgments isn't going to help you. What's going to help you is just keep a track of all of these things. And at the end of the week, look at your processes and look at your life and see how can you adjust your life so you better fit your processes. When you do, you watch your life change. All right, I've taken up enough of your time. If you like this, go ahead and hit share with other people if you think it'll help them. If you have any comments, leave them down in the comments and we'll talk about it in the next thing. This was actually a question sent by a listener, Jeremy, in Australia. So I hope this answered your question. And And as always, you can email me at lao@fourdragonschool.com. Until then, we'll see you on the next Tao in a Minute.